This all happened about 6 months ago when I was working the night shift at a packaging warehouse on the edge of town. I'd only been there for 3 weeks at that point, still getting used to the layout and the rhythms of the place. The warehouse runs 24 hours, so the overnight crew is small, maybe 8 or 9 of us, spread across the entire floor. My job was quality control, which meant walking the lines every hour and logging anything that looked off. Most nights were completely boring, and I was fine with that. I want to give a little background first, because I think it matters. I'm a 22-year-old from a small town in Romania. I moved here about a year ago to work and save money before I go back to finish my degree. My English is decent, but not perfect. So bear with me if some of this comes out sounding a little strange. I also want to say that I debated for a long time whether to share this. This was because part of me is still not sure what I saw and what I imagined. But enough time has passed that I feel okay talking about it now. The night it happened was in February, a Tuesday. The shift started at 10 and ran until 6 in the morning. By about 1:30 a.m., the floor was quieter than usual because 2 guys on my section had called in sick. That left me essentially doing a loop on my own. The warehouse is massive, maybe the length of 2 football fields, and the far end near the loading docks had these older fluorescent lights that flickered constantly and gave off this low buzzing sound that I could always hear whenever I walked close. I hated that end of the building. I was finishing my second walkthrough when I noticed one of the side doors near the dock area was cracked open about 6 inches. That was unusual because we kept those doors sealed during winter and there were strict rules about it. I figured one of the forklift guys had just been sloppy about closing it on his way out. I walked over and pushed it shut. That's when I heard something moving in the far corner of the loading bay, behind a stack of wooden pallets. I stopped and listened. It was a soft, slow dragging sound, like something heavy being pulled across the concrete floor. I called out to ask if someone was there. Nobody answered. I stood still for probably 30 seconds, and then the sound stopped completely. I told myself it was one of the stray cats that sometimes got in through the dock doors. We'd had problems with that before, and I went back to my rounds. At around 2:15 a.m., I was sitting in the break room, filling out my log sheet, when my coworker Dani came in looking pale. Dani had been working nights at that place for almost 2 years, so she wasn't the type to get rattled by much. She poured herself a coffee and sat across from me without saying anything for a moment. "Did you go to the back storage corridor tonight?" she asked. I told her I hadn't, that I only went as far as the dock doors. She nodded slowly and wrapped both hands around her mug. She said that when she passed through the corridor on her last loop, one of the emergency exit lights at the far end was off. Not flickering, just completely dead. And that she'd heard what she described as low breathing coming from behind the metal shelving unit near the rear wall. I didn't say anything about the sound I'd heard near the pallets, and I'm not sure why. Maybe because saying it out loud to another person would have made it feel more real. We sat in the break room for a few extra minutes longer than we were supposed to. Then we both went back out to the floor together. That felt safer than splitting up. The storage corridor ran along the back of the building, parallel to the loading bays. It was used mostly for overflow inventory and old equipment. It was not a part of the warehouse that anyone spent a lot of time in during normal operations. The lights in there were always dim regardless. The shelving units were these tall, industrial metal racks that went almost to the ceiling and blocked your view of anything more than a few feet ahead of you. Dani and I walked in together. I held my flashlight up, even though the overhead lights were technically on. We got about halfway down the corridor before I felt it. This very specific sense that something was different from how it had been the last time I walked through. I couldn't immediately tell what it was. Then I looked down and saw water on the floor. Not a lot, just a thin trail of it, running from the direction of the rear exit toward the shelving on the right side. It hadn't been there an hour ago. It hadn't rained. The floor inside was always dry. Dani grabbed my arm and pointed her flashlight toward the base of the shelving unit on the right. There were footprints in the water, boot prints, large ones, leading behind the rack and not coming back out the other side. I shone my light through the gaps in the shelving and couldn't see anything except boxes and more shadow. Dani whispered that we needed to get the shift supervisor. I agreed with her immediately because I had no interest in investigating this any further on my own. Our shift supervisor that night was a man named Gregor, who was not particularly easy to rattle either. We found him on the main floor and explained what we'd found. To his credit, he took it seriously. He called the security desk at the front of the building and then walked back to the storage corridor with us and with a security guard named Philip. The four of us went in together. The boot prints were still there, and the water hadn't spread any further. Gregor and Philip moved down the aisle and checked behind the shelving rack. There was nobody there, but what they found was a pile of shipping blankets pulled into the back corner like a makeshift bed. Next to it, an empty water bottle and a torn open granola bar wrapper. Someone had been sleeping back there, possibly for more than one night. Philip radioed the front desk to check the exterior camera footage, while Gregor called the police. Dani and I went back to the break room. This time, nobody told us to go back out to the floor. The police arrived around 3:40 in the morning, 2 officers. They walked the building, checked all the exits and the perimeter outside, and didn't find anyone. The exterior cameras showed a figure moving along the south side of the building at around 11:50 p.m. and disappearing into a blind spot near the old loading dock. After that, nothing. The police took down a report and left. Gregor locked the storage corridor and told the rest of the crew that the back section was off limits for the remainder of the shift. None of us really talked much after that. I finished my last walkthrough, sticking close to the main floor, and stayed within sight of at least one other person the whole time. When 6 o'clock finally came and the day crew started filtering in, I walked out to my car faster than I ever had before. The company changed the door locks on the loading bay the following week and added a camera in the storage corridor. Gregor told me a few days later that the police had looked into it and believed the person was likely someone who had been using the building as shelter, possibly for several days. They never identified who it was or found them. I still work the night shift there, but I haven't walked that corridor alone since February. I don't think I'm going to start any time soon.